like to praise God and thank Jesus Christ, my Savior and Lord, for this opportunity to be here today. The last time I spoke to your moms, my husband was getting chemotherapy. And after his diagnosis, it was only 3 months after he died, and he was not even sick prior to that. Only by the grace of God am I able to have joy restored in my life. I miss him when we were married. It was 44 years, and he was a wonderful, godly man. And I just give God all the glory and all the praise for that. As Kristen said, my husband served in MOPS ministry for about 10 years. This is my 11th year. And I've been asked, are you still in the 2-year-old room? With some sort of amazement. And I say, well, I love the 2-year-olds. I don't have them 24/7. Every other week, 2 hours, you can deal with that. And I'm in this ministry because I love the children, but because I understand, and I can think back 42 years ago when I was raising my children and how important it is to have a fellowship with other women and just to get away and clear your head once in a while. So I just love this ministry and hope to serve in it for many years to come. My experience as a mom started when I was 25 years old. I was married at 22. I knew my husband since I'm 17 years old. So I really didn't know life without him. But we married, and at 25 years old, I had my first son. And I was a person who liked order and routine. I don't know what I was thinking. Because I had quit work. I guess I left only for, I was about 7 months. I had 2 months of some free time. And I had a porta crib set up, and I would put these little onesies and kind of imagine what the baby would look like in there. Well, marriage was not an adjustment. Having my first child was, like I said, I don't know what I was thinking. My routine was gone. Order was gone. I thought, what could there be to this? You know, they sleep, you change them, and you give them a bottle. I don't know how the whole day went. I couldn't even tell you today. 10 months old, my son, so active. I just couldn't keep up with him. I had gone to the doctor. I said, my son is hyper or something. I mean, he wanted to put us both on medication. I mean, I must have really been, you know. And so I understand the moms. I've had many trials in my life since then, but I go back to then and I realize that, you know, you can't even go to the bathroom without your child. We can love them so much, but, you know, there are times we just need a break. So I truly understand that, and that's why I do love this ministry. My older son, Bill, and his wife, Jihan, were married 5 years before I became a grandma. So I really didn't know if that was going to happen. I didn't really miss being a grandma because I didn't really know what it was going to be like. I had a lot of friends who were grandparents, and it really sounded good, but I didn't know after 5 years if that was going to happen, as I said. And when I found out Jihan was pregnant and they were going to have a baby, my husband and I were ecstatic, needless to say. Now, here's the difference. My grandson can do things that my son did that stressed me out. I've said this before. Everything he does is cute. It's all cute. There is nothing stressful, but I don't have him 24/7 either. And it's very different being a grandparent. And I'm so grateful because I am a big part, as he is a big part in my life. And I'm grateful to my son and daughter-in-law for that, because I know not everybody has that opportunity. I'd like to focus on three things today. The first being the benefits of grandparents to your children and to you. Secondly, I'd like to speak to the issue of your relationship with your parents and your in-laws. Because if that's not good, this is not going to be good for your children and grandparents. It's going to hinder it. And the third thing I'd like to focus on is what you can do as moms to encourage that relationship between your children and your grandparents and keep them connected. And I'm hoping by some of the things I say and how important you begin to realize this relationship is, you will make an effort to do so. I did not realize after reading some of this and some of the research, quite frankly, when my parents were caring for my children, I basically looked at it as they were helping me out. I am getting out, I am doing things, and they're my babysitters. But it's much more than that. And I'd like to share some of that with you today. Susan Bossack has written a book, How to Build the Grandma Connection, and these are some excerpts from her book, which I'd like to read. The special kind of love you get from a grandparent is a love you can't get anywhere else. It's an important kind of love, in fact, a very important kind of love. Parents have to worry about the children, who they will become in the future, the role to be provider and disciplinarian. Grandparents can just enjoy children for who they are in the moment. The love of a grandparent is often freer, more unconditional, and far less psychologically complex than a parent's love. The love of a parent and the love of a grandparent are different, and both are necessary. The grandparent-grandchild relationship is in fact second in emotional importance only to the parent and child relationship. Just ask a child, she said. One study of school-age children found if they were in charge of family vacations, they would want to go to Grandma and Grandpa's house. And you know, I see that when my grandson comes to my house for a visit. My house is far smaller than theirs. He has a lot of toys in his house, which I don't have in mine. However, he just loves to come to my house. And I know that he feels special in some place. Grandma has undivided attention, and I'm going to speak about those things in a moment. Parents and grandparents can't take this relationship for granted or undervalue them. You have to believe these relationships are important to make building them a priority in your life. I'd like to share with you some of the benefits to your children. You know, when my husband died, I was grieving for him, but I was grieving for Matthew as well, because my husband would have been and was a wonderful grandpa. He only had him share his life for 2.5 years. He was such a godly man, prayed for his grandson as we both do. And he was the only grandpa in this country because Jihan's parents are living in Korea. So it really broke my heart, but my husband, knowing Jesus as his Lord and Savior, knew even during his sickness, God had a purpose for his life. He knew it, and I know it. And I've had to accept that. And God has used me and drawn me much closer to himself during this difficult time, because I now am by myself. I take care of my home. My sons are very helpful, but it's me and God. It's me and God. I go all the way, and I'm very grateful. So I'd like to share some of these benefits. Children have a better sense of who they are and where they come from. They have roots, a history, and a sense of continuity and perspective. Children develop higher self-esteem, better emotional and social skills, and can even have better grades in school. Research shows children need adult influences in their lives. Some research says anywhere from 4 to 6 involved caring adults. Children feel special. You've heard many times grandparents spoil your children. But research shows that it's not really spoiling, because your children don't expect that treatment from anyone else but their grandparents. So we are entitled to spoil them somewhat. One little girl explained, "My grandma is so great because she doesn't always tell you what you're doing wrong. They just like it any way you do it." Now, there may be some exceptions to that, but it's very true. I said to another grandma friend of mine, I said, "I know my children said cute things. I know they did a lot of things, but grandparents, we might magnify everything. It's like we hang on every word." After my grandson leaves the house, I say to myself, I can't believe what he said. And I know my children might have said these things, but I don't know. You get yourself preoccupied. But grandparents, different, and all the grandmothers that I know feel the same way. Hopefully, you have grandparents like that in your children's lives, and I will go on to talk about that further. Children can get undivided attention from grandparents that tired, busy parents can't always give them. A 6-year-old girl was interviewed. She says, "I love my grandma because she's always happy for me to show her things other people don't care about." Well, it's very true. I'll look at anything. My grandson comes, he wants to know every single thing, what's in it, what it is. I mean, I could answer questions all day long. He talks nonstop like his father did. And to them, they can't speak between themselves. I don't have to worry about that. Music to my ears. It's just all great. Children have someone to talk to and confide in. That's not to say that they don't have their parents. They have additional people to speak to, people that care about them. Aside from the parents, there's nobody that cares for your children, hopefully, more than the grandparents. And grandparents can share their interests with your children. They may have things they can teach them, And I just like being Matthew's playmate. It's just fun. We have a lot of fun, and he's just into imaginary play. And he said, "Pretend, Grandma, pretend." I do anything he says. Anything he says. Now, there is a lot more to that, because there's a great benefit to you moms if you have grandparents, your parents, or your in-laws in your life. The benefits to parents with grandparents is part of their lives and their children's lives is also clear. Today's parents are often stressed and overwhelmed. A loving, supportive grandparent can give them someone to talk with, someone who's been there, but now with the benefit of hindsight can help put issues into perspective. It's also comforting to know that there are older adults who love their children. Grandparents take some of the pressure off parents. Finally, there is a tangible support of physical and sometimes financial support. And that's very comforting for parents to know. So I gave you some benefits of grandparents to you and to your children. And now I would like to talk about you and your relationship with your parents and your in-laws. That includes mother-in-law. I am a mother-in-law. And I may be a mother-in-law. My younger son is still single, but I might be a mother-in-law someday again. The quality of your children's relationship with your parents will depend greatly on your own relationship with them. Having a child can bring you closer. You can now share the experience of beauty as a parent. On the other hand, if you have very different views about how to bring up children, this could give rise to serious frictions between you and your parents. Open communication is the key to working out these differences. You all probably have the child's best interest at heart, even if you don't see eye to eye. If you continue to disagree, keep your children out of the conflict. I can't say that enough. Let them make their own relationship with your parents. Now, I'd like to speak about some of the issues you might have with your parents or your in-laws. And I know there's got to be someone here with that issue, or maybe more than someone. First, I want to remind you what God says about honoring your mother and your father and your mother. Now, what exactly does honor mean? Honor means to speak well of them and politely to them. It means to act in a way that shows courtesy and respect. Now, this doesn't mean the parents and in-laws that you get along well with. This also means the difficult ones. God commands us to honor our father and mother, even if they are difficult to get along with. Pretty much like he commands us to love our neighbor. That doesn't mean it's very easy to love the lovingly, but it's a little more difficult to love some people. But God wants us and commands us. It's not really an option. He commands us to do so. Parents are not perfect. When I was a young mom, my personality wanted to get this perfect. I did not come from a fairy tale upbringing. My parents had a lot of issues. My father had anxiety and depression, and it became very difficult for him after having a family, going out to work, and he self-medicated himself and become addicted to alcohol. That was my whole childhood. My parents in the midst of that turmoil. And this is why I can't say this enough. Do not have conflict. Do not argue. I know it's a different topic. Even with your husband, your parents, your in-laws, in front of your children. It changes who they are. It gives them great anxiety. They're terribly torn between the two. And I loved my parents, and I feel so strongly about keeping your arguments away from them. Children should not have adult problems. They shouldn't have adult issues. They have enough to deal with. And sometimes we forget in the midst of anger, and you don't think of your children there. And I say to you, please think of your children in areas like this. I am very grateful that despite my difficult childhood, I gave my parents the opportunity to be a big part in my children's lives. And my father, by far, made a better grandfather than he was able to be a father, because he was not present. He retired, he had less pressure, his children were older, and he never drank at home, So he was not in the presence of my children drinking, but he loved them dearly. And my children loved him dearly. So if you are stuck in your childhood and you have an issue with your parents, rethink it. Think about giving your children their own relationship. Don't carry that into it's not fair for your children to have them deprived of grandparents. I'm not talking about certain issues where they can't be with your children or be unsafe. I'm not talking about that. Many times we have disagreements with our in-laws and parents that are not monumental. They're just that they offended me or things like that. I've been offended. My mother-in-law has said a few things to me. My parents have said, somehow, I haven't figured it out yet, but somehow what a mother-in-law says seems to stick a little bit more than your own parents. I'm not quite sure why that is, but it is so. And I have learned that if you think you came from a place that wasn't picture perfect, that does not have to define you. It does not have to be your whole life. You know, like embracing your story, part of your theme from Beautiful Mess, reminds moms that past, present, and future can be used for good. God knows where each of us has been, where we are today, and where He set in motion where we are headed. So if you can, try your very best to honor your parents. Try to resolve some of the problems you've had in the past. There are many reasons. I mean, first of all, there is a generation gap. When I was raising my children, I had one book. It was Dr. Spock. It was a big pocket book. Any problems, that was the only place I could go. We have different ideas than young mothers. 40 years ago, I raised my children. Not only that, grandparents are now observers. We are not so busy, but we observe. And every grandparent I spoke to, every grandmother, we see things. Now, the wise parent and in-law doesn't say too much. The wise doesn't mean we're not thinking it. Because you raise children a different way. I mean, it could be as little as, okay, my children slept on their stomach. Okay, that's out. Juice is bad for their teeth. Bumpers, as they say, the children could smug. We didn't have any of this. Children in past generations, before mine and raising my children, had very little say in the family. You said something to a child, I said, what? Because I said so. And as time goes on, the generation today, children have a lot to say. They're allowed to say a lot because they've got to express themselves now. So be patient with your parents because this is all new. This is not the way past generation have raised children. Now, you may sometimes say, my mother, very critical. Well, you see, it's how you look at it. Now, she may be trying to give you some advice. When you're a new mom, we think we know everything, we want to do it our way. We don't really want advice. Now, the grandmothers that I know, especially ones that have daughters, they look at their daughters, and when they say something that might be interpreted as critical, they're really trying to make life a little easier for their daughters. They might see they have too much on their plate, or they might see that, years ago, you made dinner. That was the dinner. If your child didn't eat it, they didn't eat. That's before. I didn't do that. That was past generations. Now they get a lot of choices. What do you want? I see them in the supermarket. They even get choices about what you're going to get in the grocery store. I'm talking about little ones. So it's different. You've got to give us a chance to digest this. this is well, no, this is like, this is not, And I'll say something, and then there might be cultural differences. Your parents may be born in another country. Parenting is very different. They don't know anything else. So I know it's a two-way street, but I don't have grandparents and in-laws here, otherwise I could say something to them. So I'm only talking to you, and I just say, be a little patient. Try to understand where they're coming from. And you know what I found through the years? Many people have confided in me for different things. I have not met a person that was an angry person or had a mean appearance. I don't know if you ever heard this, hurting people hurt people. It doesn't mean you have to accept it. There isn't a person that acts the way they do with no known reason. I was in the store last week, and I was talking to this woman. I may have mentioned, I think she knew that I had lost my husband, because now I don't do a heck of a lot of cooking. And I was getting some prepared food. And she was starting to talk to me about her mother. I know she was having a real bad day. She said, my mother lost my father, which is very needy. And she says, I really want to get away and go very far from her. And I thought, how sad is that? Because her children are hearing this when she goes, and they're hearing the confrontation. I said, do you know anything about your mother's background? Her mother was beaten in Vietnam, she tells me. I'm telling you, ladies, there's a lot of hurting people out there. And I had a friend once, and from her outer appearance, she looked like she was a snob. People would say to me, what's with her? She doesn't, act. She was self-conscious. She was, did not have a good self-esteem. But from the outside, people were looking at, and she had a history of abuse as a young girl, a little girl actually. So maybe we could just be a little understanding, maybe find something out. And this could go for any people you deal, any person you deal with. It doesn't only have to be your parents and your in-laws. And I would like to read from 1 Corinthians 13, verses 4 through 7. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It keeps no record of wrongs. So many times somebody says something to us, particularly our parents or our in-laws, and it just keeps running in our head. We've got to let some of these things go. God commands forgiveness, not for their benefit, for yours, because otherwise you carry these things around, and God knows it's a terrible burden. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in truth. It always protects, trusts, hopes, and perseveres. Ladies, I would like you to keep in mind, as we talk about your parents and your in-laws, someday you will most likely be a grandparent. You would want the honor and respect given that you hopefully give to your parents and in-laws, which is so very important. And I'd also like to read from Colossians 3:12-14. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dear love, clothe yourself with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another. If any of you has a grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord has forgave you. And over all these virtues, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. You will be teaching your children a great lesson in forgiveness for their future if you learn to forgive. I also want you to keep in mind that all grandparents are different. Some of them are available a little bit more than others. Some are willing to give more time than others. It certainly depends on how many grandchildren they have. You know, at this time I have one grandchild, so I can give him a lot of time. But for certain reasons, not all grandparents can do that. It could be health issues, or there are actually some grandparents that I know of that have raised their children and they feel now it's their children's time. Whatever the story is, just try to enjoy whatever time you have with your parents, whatever time you're willing, and you have to respect their boundaries. There's not too much you can do about that. Now, I've spoken about the benefits of grandparents to you and your children. I've talked about your relationship with your parents and in-laws. And third, I'd like to talk about some of the things you can do to encourage a good relationship and keep your children connected to their grandparents. Talk lovingly about your parents and in-laws in your child's presence. I know this has been repeated, but if you have something to say to your husband, for instance, about his mother, take it elsewhere. Because your children, you're hurting them. They may love your grandmother, their grandmother. If there is a conflict, as I said, same idea, don't argue in front of the children. And tell your children how much their grandparents love them. It's so very important. Now, I totally enjoy visiting. My son and daughter aren't seeing Matthew. They live in New Jersey. But in spite of that distance, I do get to see him quite often. There are times that I go to their house. I totally forget to say hello to my son and daughter-in-law. I see Matthew, and it's all over. I'm traumatized. And then I say, did I say hello to you? I do that after, they don't mind. And it could go both ways. Try to bring your children to your grandparents, to their grandparents if they can, and give your parents or in-laws a little alone time. It's great to be in a family setting, but there's nothing sweeter than a grandparent and a grandchild alone doing something special. Make something with your child, or encourage them if they're too small. My daughter-in-law, I'm so grateful because Matthew has made me so many things. She's put in the time. I realize she has one child. Some of these things don't take a whole lot of time. He's given me cards with his handprint, a jewelry box where he's put all these little jewels on it. Might as well be gold. It's worth more to me than anything. And always made me Christmas tree ornaments. And she made a beautiful album, I guess through Shutterfly, of his first year of life. And the list goes on and on. She's taken him to ceramics class to make me a mug. I love you, Grandma. I am so grateful to her for that because it means so much to me. When he gives it to me, there's joy. When he comes to my house, he sees these things displayed in my house. He's overjoyed. Every time he comes, we go over this, what he gave me. It's just wonderful. It's just a blessing. Photos, that's simple. We love to receive photos of your children. They could be of preschool, it could be their friends, anything. As long as the grandchild's on it, we love them. We love to show them. Many people have seen mine. I would have brought some, but you know, it would not in your benefit. I'm trying to speak on your benefit today. Otherwise, I would have brought a few things with. My son, he calls me very often. Both of my sons do, especially since their father passed away. They're constantly calling, and I spoke with Matthew this morning, and my son says, Matthew wants to tell you something. He wants to come to your house, or you come to our house for a long time, he says. And I can't tell you what it does when I don't see him. I say, Bill, keep me posted, and he does that. And I just know what's going on in his life. It's just a wonderful, wonderful thing. And I'm not the only one. These are all different things that many of my grandma friends will agree with. And if you have parents that are in another country or live a distance away, you can email, you can send them pictures, you can Skype. There's so many things so that your children will know grandparents are important. It's just a blessing. And in closing, I would like to say, if your children have a good relationship with your parents and your in-laws, do not take it for granted. You need to be very grateful because it is a blessing to you and your children. If you have conflict with your parents or your in-laws, try to resolve your differences and forgive for the benefit of you and your children. Try to help your children stay connected with their grandparents. Someday, you may be one. Thank you very much.